Hidden behind forests that swallowed stone and silence, there stood a fortress no map remembers. Its walls were once sharp against the sky. Its cannons once watched the horizon without blinking. Men were stationed there. Orders were written there. Lives were lived inside its cold stone ribs. And then, as if erased by a careful hand, it disappeared from memory. In the early 1600s, deep within the rural provinces of western France, a royal fortress was constructed far from the noise of Paris. It was built under the authority of the French crown. Its purpose was strategic. Its presence deliberate. Within a generation, it would vanish from official records and from public knowledge. France in the early 17th century was restless. The kingdom was consolidating power after decades of religious conflict. The monarchy sought control over provinces that had once resisted its authority. Remote strongholds were both protection and warning. They guarded trade roads. They signaled presence. They reminded the countryside who ruled. In this climate, a stone fortress was commissioned in a sparsely populated region of western France. Dense forests surrounded the site. A narrow river ran nearby. The location was not chosen for beauty. It was chosen for silence and distance. The crown wanted a secure outpost far from major cities. A place difficult to approach unnoticed. Construction began with local laborers supervised by royal military engineers. The design followed early 1600s French fortification principles. Thick stone ramparts. Angular bastions. Narrow firing slits for muskets. A central courtyard. A modest keep. No decoration beyond the royal insignia carved above the gate. The garrison assigned to the fort was small. Around 50 soldiers. All French. They wore standard infantry attire of the period. Broad-brimmed felt hats. Doublets reinforced with leather. Steel morion helmets for guard duty. Matchlock muskets and pikes. Their commanding officer held royal commission papers sealed in wax. Officially, the fort's purpose was defensive. Unofficially, it functioned as a secure holding site. Certain prisoners passed through its gates. Some were political dissidents. Others were smugglers accused of disrupting royal taxation. Records were minimal. Deliveries were made quietly. Transfers occurred at night. The surrounding villages saw the fort as distant and closed. Supplies were delivered weekly. Bread. Salted meat. Powder. Replacement flints. Beyond that, there was little interaction. Soldiers rarely entered nearby settlements. The commander discouraged familiarity. The men stationed there adapted to routine. Guard rotations. Maintenance of walls. Drills with muskets. Inspections of powder stores. Letters sent home, though infrequently answered. The fort became a world contained within stone. Self-sufficient. Isolated. Yet isolation has weight. Winters were long. Forest fog lingered. Communication from Paris was delayed. Orders arrived late. News of national politics felt distant. The soldiers existed on the edge of relevance. Their mission unclear beyond obedience. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The fortress stood firm. Its walls were dry. Its powder remained stable. Its commander remained loyal. But remoteness can conceal more than enemies. It can conceal neglect. And neglect had already begun. By the middle of the century, France was transforming under stronger centralized authority. Cardinal ministers reshaped administration. Regional autonomy weakened. Military resources were redirected toward larger conflicts closer to borders. Remote installations became less important. The fortress remained supplied, but inconsistently. Shipments grew irregular. Ammunition arrived late. Replacement soldiers were not sent when terms ended. The garrison shrank gradually. Illness reduced numbers further. Damp quarters contributed to fever and respiratory disease. Letters requesting clarification of purpose were sent to superiors. Responses were brief. Maintain position. Await further orders. Meanwhile, the forest thickened. Roads deteriorated. Traders avoided the route. The river shifted slightly after heavy flooding one spring, eroding part of the outer earthworks. Repairs were attempted but incomplete. Inside the fort, discipline loosened. Guard rotations shortened due to lack of manpower. Prisoner transfers stopped entirely. Cells stood empty. The holding function quietly ceased without formal announcement. The commander aged. His authority remained intact, but his health declined. His reports grew shorter. Eventually, they stopped. A junior officer assumed operational control. He faced practical questions. What were they guarding? Who were they protecting? No immediate threat existed. No enemy approached. The region was quiet. Supplies dwindled further. Salted meat spoiled during one delayed delivery. Powder stores became damp due to roof leaks. The garrison dismantled and used sections of interior woodwork for fuel during a harsh winter. Morale eroded slowly. Desertion occurred. One soldier left during patrol and never returned. Another disappeared while sent to the nearest village. No search parties were organized. There were too few men left. The fort no longer felt strategic. It felt abandoned. Communication with Paris ceased entirely after a courier failed to arrive one season. Whether he never departed or never reached them remained unknown. By the late 1600s, fewer than 20 men occupied the structure built for more than double that number. Watchtowers were unmanned at times. Cannon positions were unused. Rust spread across metal fittings. The junior officer made a decision. Without orders, but with survival in mind, he reduced active operations. Only essential guard posts remained staffed. Certain gates were permanently closed to conserve labor. It was not rebellion. It was adaptation. But adaptation signaled decline. The fortress still stood. Its walls still cast shadows at sunset. Smoke still rose from its chimneys. Yet its purpose had dissolved. And without purpose, even stone begins to fade. The final winter came without announcement. Snow fell early that year. Heavier than before. Supply routes became impassable. The remaining garrison had provisions for weeks, not months. Attempts to reach nearby settlements failed due to blocked roads and fallen trees. Inside the fortress, rationing began. Bread was reduced. Meat portions halved. Firewood nearly gone. Wooden doors from unused chambers were dismantled and burned for heat. Disease returned. Cold intensified it. 2 soldiers died within days of each other. They were buried inside the courtyard because the ground beyond the walls was frozen solid. The junior officer faced an impossible calculation. Stay and risk starvation. Or abandon the post without authorization. No messenger could be sent safely. No relief was expected. The decision was made quietly. The remaining men would leave at dawn once the weather eased slightly. They would travel light. Weapons carried. Heavy equipment abandoned. Cannons left in place. Powder stores sealed but unused. Before departure, the officer entered the command chamber. He gathered the last official documents. Some were burned in the hearth. Others were sealed in a wooden chest and stored in a dry corner of the keep. Whether by intention or oversight remains unclear. At first light, under a pale winter sky, fewer than 15 men opened the gate. They did not march in formation. They did not lower a flag. No ceremony marked the exit. They walked into the forest. Snow covered their tracks within hours. No official record notes their arrival in any nearby town. No court inquiry mentions abandonment. The names of the final garrison fade from surviving military rolls around that period. The fortress remained unmanned, silent, intact but empty. Seasons passed. Roofs collapsed gradually. Rain weakened mortar. Vines climbed walls. One bastion cracked after years of frost expansion. Local villagers avoided the site. Some believed it cursed. Others simply forgot its origin. Maps stopped marking it. Administrative records omitted it. The crown moved on. Wars shifted. Generations changed. Stone endured for a time. Memory did not. The forest did not reclaim the fortress in a single season. It moved slowly, patiently. Grass pushed through cracks in the courtyard stone. Rain collected where boots once marched. Wind passed through empty corridors without resistance. No messenger ever returned to reopen the gates. No royal decree formally dissolved the garrison. No record explained the silence. The cannons remained fixed toward a horizon that no longer threatened anything. Their iron darkened. Their wood split with frost. The matchlock rests gathered dust. Powder turned useless in damp barrels. Inside the keep, chambers that once held voices became hollow. The command room, once lit by candle flame and sealed documents, faded into shadow. Walls that carried the carved emblem of the French crown began to chip and erode. Stone remembers pressure. It does not remember names. Villagers avoided the site at first out of uncertainty. Then out of habit. Then not at all, because paths leading there disappeared. Children grew up without knowing why stone walls stood beyond the trees. Fathers stopped telling stories about soldiers who once guarded the river road. Maps printed decades later left the fortress unmarked. Cartographers favored relevance. Seasons layered themselves over the structure. Winter cracked mortar. Spring fed vines that tightened around bastions. Autumn buried the courtyard beneath leaves. The men who walked away that final morning dissolved into anonymity. No monument carries their ranks. No parish record confirms their last formation. Their departure left no echo strong enough to travel beyond the forest. What had once been strategic became incidental. What had once required supply lines and authority required nothing. Silence became permanent. Eventually roofs collapsed inward. Floors rotted through. Sections of wall fell without witness. Travelers who later crossed the region might have mistaken the stones for remnants of something older. Perhaps medieval. Perhaps Roman. Time erases context before it erases matter. The fortress was never conquered. It was never celebrated. It was never ceremonially closed. It simply ceased to matter. And when a structure loses its purpose, memory loosens its grip. Without battle. Without proclamation. Without final report. The fort stood. It endured. It emptied. Then it waited. And in waiting too long, it was forgotten.